This is the 46 of 46 podcast Summit Sessions, where we'll talk all things Adirondack, backcountry, and beyond. From high peak stories and adventures to trail tips and tricks, we'll dive deep into the heart of these mountains and the people who passionately climb them. Adirondack maps and spruce traps, bushwhacks and backpacks. It's all here on the 46 of 46 Summit Sessions. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Summit Sessions here on the 46 of 46 podcast. This week's episode is going to highlight a backpacking route, or a challenge, if you will, that takes hikers from the very top of this 6 million acre state park to the very bottom. A complete route traversing the entire Adirondacks from Blue Line to Blue Line, starting a mere 9 miles south of the Canadian border all the way down to the southern tip of the park. Established in 2013 by Eric Schlimmer, this primitive pathway known as the Trans Adirondack Route stretches 235 miles from the northern Blue Line starting in Ellenburg, New York, down to the southern Blue Line near the hamlet of LaSallesville by connecting approximately 185 miles of trails, 39 miles of roads, and 11 miles of off-trail travel. Hope you like bushwhacking. This route has also gained the nickname of being the Triple Crown Killer, due to defeating 3 different Triple Crown finishers. And in case you're not familiar, a Triple Crowner is someone who has hiked all of the Appalachian Trail, all of the Pacific Crest Trail, and all of the Continental Divide Trail, which totals over 8,000 miles of hiking. So needless to say, if people with those hiking accolades couldn't complete this 235-mile TransADK route, it's not for everyone and is realistically for the most experienced of outdoors men and women. You know, the Adirondack Park is a big place. If you were to combine Acadia, Bryce Canyon, Glacier, the Grand Canyon, Great Smoky Mountains, Yellowstone, Yosemite, and Zion National Parks to form one new park, it still wouldn't be as big as the Adirondack Park. So needless to say, this place is big, wild, and rugged, and this route is a major challenge. This week, I have not only a TransADK finisher here to tell us her complete backpacking story on this infamous route, but she's the 5th person to ever complete the route, the 2nd to do it solo, and she holds the fastest known time, completing the trail in a mere 10 days, 6 hours, and 46 minutes. That's an average of 23 miles a day. Incredible. Her name is Marilyne Marchand, and she's here to take us through her journey day by day as she traversed the Adirondack Park from Blue Line to Blue Line. Marilyne, thanks so much for coming on the 46 of 46 podcast.
Well, thanks for this opportunity.
Yeah, it's going to be very exciting to talk about this route. There's so few people who have been able to actually complete the TransADK route, and I haven't been able to find anyone's full story about it. So on a personal level, along with the people listening, I'm very excited to hear about it. It's going to be a nice treat. But before we dive into your thru hike, let's get a little backstory on yourself. How'd you get into the outdoors and backpacking, and then what led you to decide to tackle the Trans Adirondack route in particular?
Well, being outdoors is not something I did as a kid at all. My parents were not outdoorsy. We never went camping. So what happened is eventually I started rock climbing in my early 20s. And of course, when you go rock climbing, you start camping and all, and you start exploring more areas. And I really fell in love with the great outdoors. And eventually, rock climbing led me to long distance hiking. My first motivation for hiking was the long trail I wanted to do in New Zealand, the Aurora Trail. And from there, I was really hooked on long distance hiking.
All right, cool. So I can tell from your accent. So where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Montreal in Canada.
Okay, cool. So you're not far from the Adirondacks at all from that point, especially from the start of the TransADK route, or I guess the end if you go northbound, which is how you did it.
Yes, which is about an hour from home, so not too bad.
Yeah, very cool. All right, so let's just hop right into it. So basically on this episode, we're going to go through her entire hike day by day and give you guys a firsthand experience and encounters of what she experienced on the trail. But before we get to the actual hiking, let's talk about your prep. So what was your prep leading up to this hike? Did you read the guidebook, the Blue Line to Blue Line? What did you do to prepare before you actually got out onto the trail?
So I decided to do this trail while I took a year off from work. So I was on a sabbatical, went to New Zealand, hike for 5 months there, and then traveled a bit, did another long trail in South Korea. And while I was researching the trail in South Korea, I actually stumbled across the Trans Adirondack Route. So I actually ordered a guidebook while I was still in South Korea, and it was delivered to my home in Canada at the time. And I came back home after 9 months of traveling and basically had 20 days from when I came home until I started the trail. So
Wow.
not that much time in planning. I did read the guidebook. However, until you're there, sometimes just reading, oh, turn left here, take this trail there, it doesn't mean much, but I just wanted to make sure I wouldn't miss anything. So read the guidebook. I had the maps from Eric, the founder of the trail. So I actually traced GPX file that I would have on my phone just as a backup. And that was pretty much my prep. I also mailed myself a package to a shop in Long Lake because I wasn't sure overall how much time this would take me. This was 5 years ago, and very few people had hiked the trail at that time. Some people took up to 3 weeks. Eric took, I think, 12 or 13 days. So I wasn't sure how much time I would need.
Sure. And I mean, you have the fastest known time, so you crushed it. Was that something you were attempting to do, or it just happened to work out that you finished it faster than anybody else has?
I had no idea until I finished that I had the fastest known time. It was not my goal at all. I was not aiming for that. My main goal, because I was hiking right before Labor Day, was not to have to cross the border on Labor Day, because that means usually waiting for hours. That was my only goal.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
That makes perfect sense. I cannot blame you there. Cool. So did any of the bushwhacking on this trip, on this trail, concern you at all? Since, there's 11 miles worth of off-trail travel. Did any of that, was it a concern for you, or did you have experience doing that? Because I know the bushwhacking part of this journey is what makes a lot of people quit. So what were your thoughts going into it?
Oh, I was definitely nervous about that. It's not something I had a ton of experience with. Bushwalking in the Adirondacks is quite the experience. The bush there is quite thick. So yes, I was very nervous about that. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I would freak out, but yeah, in the end, I managed to do it. The longer sections, I find it hard mentally. I must say, though, that having kind of the GPS backup on my phone was helpful. I know the founder of this route is not a big fan of GPS in general, but it was helpful for me being a solo hiker.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I was doing it, I would absolutely have the route plotted in my GPS too. Can't blame you there. I would do the exact same thing. But cool. So that's good then. So you were able to make it through based on GPS elements. Definitely makes the bushwhacking less stressful, because I mean, when you're out there, and in these places in particular where this trail goes through, you are on your own. So in my mind, anything that will help is fair game. Cool. So what did you bring with you as far as gear goes? So you have a lot of experience doing these backpacking trips, these long distance trails. So what does your gear tend to look like on the TransADK route? I assume it's probably similar to what you've done in the past as far as the gear and your tent, your clothes and all that. Take us through what you had with you.
Yeah, so my base weight was around 11 pounds. I did not bring a stove for this one, which was kind of a new thing for me. I only survived on bars and nuts and things like that. So no stove, pretty light tent. I had a Z-Pax duplex tent that you set up with your hiking poles. Other than that, pretty regular stuff. Also a Z-Pax backpack that was quite light, helped me keep my base weight down. 20 degrees sleeping bag, and just a regular headlamp. I had a spot messenger Didn't have an inReach at the time, just a spot. So I would send my location every day, a charger for my phone. Because yes, I didn't have the GPS on there, but I try to like to use it as little as possible. I wanted my battery to last as long as possible. Water filter, some clothes appropriate for the season. I'll say I was very lucky throughout my whole hike. I had no rain at all.
Wow.
I think it rained once for 15 minutes, and that was it. So extremely lucky, and that definitely helped me set a faster time than what had been done before.
That is insanely impressive for the Adirondacks to be out for 10 and a half days with 15 minutes of rain. That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. What was the size of your pack?
It was a 52 liters.
52 liters, got it. Man, 10-pound base, that's awesome. Cool. And so for food, you brought nuts and bars and stuff. I would assume that probably got old around, what, day 2 or day 3?
I brought some bars that I really like and chocolate as well. So it was fine. In Long Lake, I did buy some snacks. But after hiking for so many months, like I knew what I like, and I brought only stuff I really enjoyed. So not too much trouble. I was happy at the end to have like a real meal. But I mean, 10 days of eating bars, I didn't suffer too much. It's fine with me to just eat bars and not lose too much time cooking.
Sure. Yeah, it saves a lot of weight too. And obviously the food you'd bring, if you had to cook it, tends to have some weight to it as well. Now, why did you go solo? Was that due to just that's how you'd like to hike, or couldn't find someone to go with you, didn't want someone to go with you? What was the reason for that, especially at that time when this was such a brand new concept, a new route, this trail, when you did it?
This was kind of the end of a sabbatical year for me, and I didn't know anyone around Montreal that would want to do this route that was kind of new and unknown. I was going back to work shortly after, so I had kind of a short window to do it. I plan most of my hikes on my own, and then if I meet people along the way, great. But of course, on this route, it wasn't going to happen, and I enjoy hiking alone. It's something I really like. Usually people often ask me if I'm afraid, and if it's been a while, I've slept like in the forest on my own. Usually the first couple nights I'll be a little more nervous, lighter sleep, but then eventually I'm so tired that I sleep very soundly.
Sure, totally. Cool. Well, I'd say let's get right into it. So you hiked this trail northbound. So I assume somebody dropped you off in LaSallesville and you started hiking north. So let's go through day 1. You started at the beginning. Did you have a plan how far you wanted to go that day? How many miles? Any idea like that? And what do you remember about day 1?
I'll be honest with you, it's been 5 years, so I don't remember exactly when my daily goals were. For some days, I do remember. The first day, I think I just wanted to get a feel for the trail. I don't remember having any precise objective. I started hiking around 8 a.m. It's on a residential street, really, that there's the park boundary. There's no sign. It's just, you know where it is, and you start hiking. People around there might give you weird looks. I was lucky enough to have someone drop me off there from Montreal. It's quite the ways, but another option I think could be with some Greyhound buses to get to, what is it in the area, Johnstown? And then potentially, I don't know, hitch, or I don't know how you could get there otherwise.
Sure.
But anyways, you walk on this road a very short time, and then you end up on snowmobile trails. At first, they're well marked. Eventually, they get a little wilder. I remember one of the trails, there were ferns, like almost as tall as I am. So couldn't see the trail very well. It was pretty muddy in sections, even though I don't know if it had rained in the days before. I was just starting, so that was the beginning of the dry period for me. The trail was easy to follow at first, and eventually the maps that Eric provides are really good, very helpful. However, they don't always mark the trails exactly where they are. And when I traced my GPX file, I try to mark exactly as it was on his maps. So sometimes I would spend too much time trying to find a trail that was actually like not exactly where it showed it on the map.